I never wanted a baby shower. The idea of people pretending to celebrate something they didn't care about made my skin crawl. But Carla insisted. "You'll regret not having memories," she said, flashing that perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. Ethan thought it was a sweet gesture. I knew better. The living room was decorated in pale pinks and golds. Carla's touch, not mine. My taste was simpler, softer, but everything had her flair. Elaborate balloon arches, custom cupcakes with Emma's name scripted in fondant, even party favors shaped like tiny designer handbags. I stood in the center of it all, smiling like a guest at someone else's party. The guests were mostly from Ethan's side, his mother, aunts, cousins. They came more for Carla than for me. She floated around the room, holding Mason, her 2-year-old, like a trophy. He wore a tiny suit and bootie. I overheard someone call him the cutest baby ever born into this family. They didn't know I was standing behind the kitchen doorway, but even if they had, I doubt the words would have changed. I opened gifts with Carla seated beside me, narrating each item louder than necessary. "Oh my God, look at this. Little booties." "Anna, did you even have a registry or did we just guess?" Laughter. I laughed too, quieter. Emma kicked gently inside me and I pressed a hand to my belly, anchoring myself. After the cake had been sliced and people drifted into smaller conversations, Carla pulled me aside. She led me to the hallway near the guest bathroom, away from the noise. I remember the way she leaned against the wall, arms crossed, her voice casual like she was talking about the weather. "You know," she said, "being a mom, it changes everything. The way people see you, the way they love you. It's a different world when you have a child who fits." I didn't respond. I didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. She tilted her head. "Don't take this the wrong way, Anna, but some babies just draw people in. It's in their energy. Mason had it since the day he was born. I mean, you've seen how everyone is with him. Some babies are just..." She paused, smiled. "More loved." I blinked. "Are you saying my baby won't be?" "I'm saying," she replied smoothly, "it's not something you can force. People either feel it or they don't. And in families, well, ... Those things show fast, especially when there's already a favorite." There was no venom in her voice, which made it worse. It was clinical, observational, like she'd already decided how my daughter would be received before she took her first breath. She walked away before I could speak, heels tapping against the hardwood floor, calling for Ethan to help carry more plates from the kitchen. I stood in that hallway longer than I meant to. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just hollowed out. My hands rested on my belly again, waiting for a kick, some sign that Emma had heard and disagreed. But she was still. Or maybe I just couldn't feel anything past the thickness in my chest. The rest of the shower passed like fog. I smiled when expected. I posed for photos. I accepted compliments on my glowing skin and radiant joy, though no one asked how I was sleeping or if I was scared. That night, Ethan wrapped an arm around me in bed and whispered, "You know she means well. Carla just doesn't filter." I didn't answer. I couldn't explain that it wasn't what Carla said, it was that she believed it. She believed some children came into the world with applause and others with silence. And somewhere deep down, she was ready to make sure Emma heard silence. I stared at the ceiling until morning, Emma moving gently beneath my ribs, and made a quiet promise to her. "You will be loved, even if I'm the only one clapping." Dinner at the Mitchells always followed the same script. Carla arrived 15 minutes late, arms full of noise and Mason's demands. She made an entrance, and everyone pivoted like sunflowers to her light. I usually arrived early, partly out of habit, partly to help set the table, though no one ever noticed. Ethan called it just family dynamics. I called it erosion. We sat around the long oak table Ethan's father had built with his own hands. 12 seats, 2 generations, and somehow I always felt like an extra chair pulled from the garage. Carla's voice carried over the clink of silverware, narrating Mason's milestones like dispatches from royalty. "He's starting to read on his own," she said one night, though he was barely 2. "He knows the alphabet and all the presidents." Laughter erupted around the table. Ethan chuckled too, though I caught the glance he threw me afterward small, apologetic, like he knew I was counting how many words anyone had said to me. No one asked about Emma, not about the pregnancy, not about names or cravings or how my back was holding up. The closest they came was when Ethan's mother said, "You're carrying so small. Hope that doesn't mean anything." And then she laughed, sipping wine, oblivious to the freeze that settled in my spine. I tried to offer stories. I really did. I once mentioned that Emma moved the most when I played Debussy through my headphones. Silence. Carla interrupted to say, Mason preferred jazz, real music. They all nodded like that settled it. The worst part was Ethan's silence. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't dismissive, but he existed in a space where discomfort was easier than confrontation. "It's not personal," he told me once as we drove home. "They just don't know how to connect with you yet." Yet, as if connection was pending approval, as if motherhood would be the rite of passage into their hearts, but only if Emma was the right kind of baby. Carla had taken to bringing comparison gifts. A hand-me-down bassinet, still practically new. Mason hated it. A stack of books on parenting. This one helped me understand how to get real attachment. Each item came with a casual dig, wrapped in shiny boughs of generosity. I thanked her every time. What else could I do? One Sunday, as we cleared dishes, I overheard Carla talking to Ethan's dad near the sink. "I just hope Anna's ready. Motherhood's not for everyone. Some women lose themselves completely." His response was a grunt, maybe agreement, maybe just noise. I didn't wait to find out. That night, I sat in Emma's unfinished nursery, surrounded by boxes of things I hadn't had the energy to unpack. The mobile I ordered weeks ago still lay in plastic. The books sat in piles on the floor. I traced circles on my belly and whispered a question I didn't mean to say aloud. "Will I be enough for you?" She kicked once, sharp and clear. I closed my eyes and held that one movement like a secret. At the next family dinner, Carla arrived in a new dress, Mason trailing behind with peanut butter on his cheeks. I watched her kiss everyone's cheeks, watched the way their eyes lit up at her presence. Then I stepped into the room, belly first. Not one person stood to hug me. Not one hand reached out to touch the life inside me. I took my place at the table and smiled through it. But inside, something hard and quiet began to form. Not bitterness, not yet. Just the shape of a question that wouldn't go away. What happens when the invisible mother has a child no one can ignore? It was just past midnight when I finally opened the crib box. The house was quiet. Ethan asleep upstairs after another long shift. I had waited, telling myself it was because I needed his help. But truthfully, I wanted to do it alone. I needed to do something with my hands, something that meant Emma was really coming, that I wasn't just floating in the spaces between other people's lives. The instructions were in 6 languages, none of which seemed like English. I sat cross-legged on the floor of the nursery. Pieces of wood spread around me like the wreckage of something I hadn't built fast enough. Every turn of the screwdriver made my wrists ache. The screws slid sideways. I cursed quietly, then softer when Emma nudged me from the inside. I paused. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "It's just a crib. I'll get it." It wasn't just the crib, of course. It was the silence from Ethan's family, the way Carla's voice echoed in my head like a warning. "More loved than yours." It was the ache in my lower back, the swelling in my ankles, the messages left unread by friends who didn't know what to say to a woman who cried over bassinets and baby socks. Halfway through building it, I cut my finger on a metal edge. The sting brought tears faster than the pain warranted. I sat there, bleeding onto a diaper wipe, holding my breath like if I made no sound, I could stay in one piece. When Ethan found me an hour later, the crib was standing, crooked, but standing. He blinked sleep from his eyes. "Why didn't you wake me?" "I wanted to finish it," I said. My voice was steady. That surprised me. He walked over, kissed the top of my head. "It looks great." It didn't, but it held. He left a few minutes later to get water, and I stayed in the nursery, touching the railing, trying to picture her in it. I imagined her hands reaching up, her eyes following the mobile I hadn't hung yet. I imagined what it would feel like to pick her up from sleep, to be the only thing she needed. Carla hadn't reached out since the last dinner. No check-ins. No baby tips. It should have felt like peace, but instead, I heard the echo of her voice every time I looked at Emma's things. She had planted doubt like a seed, and I couldn't seem to stop watering it. I opened the closet and stared at the tiny onesies hung neatly in a row, most of them gifts from Ethan's coworkers or things I'd bought secondhand. One still had the tag from a clearance bin, $3.99. It was the softest fabric I'd touched in weeks. I pressed it to my face and let the tears come this time. No choking them back, no pretending it was hormones. It was loneliness. It was fear. It was the creeping thought that maybe Carla was right, that love wasn't given equally, even to babies. When I went to bed, Ethan had already turned off the lamp. He reached for me under the covers, hand finding mine. "You okay?" "I just wanted her to have a place," I said. He pulled me closer. "She has a place." "She has you." I didn't answer. I didn't say that sometimes I wasn't sure even I had me. Emma kicked again, gentle, reassuring. I rested my hand over her, willing her to feel that she was wanted, that the world might be cold, but I would be warm, even if it meant building everything crooked, even if no one else clapped when she came. Tomorrow I'd hang the mobile. I'd unpack the books. I'd pick a lullaby and play it on repeat until the silence faded. But tonight I just lay there and listened to her move inside me, proof that something was growing, quietly, despite everything. Emma was born on a Saturday morning in April, rain tapping against the hospital windows, like it was trying to keep rhythm with her tiny heart. Labor was longer than I expected. Hours of breathing through waves, nurses repositioning me, Ethan gripping my hand like he was holding a rope in a storm. But when she arrived, slick and furious and perfect, the room went silent for a beat. Then she cried, a sound that felt like the world splitting open and stitching itself together in the same moment. I held her against my chest while Ethan wiped at his eyes, overwhelmed. I whispered her name like a secret. "Emma, my Emma." We took a photo of the three of us. My hair was wild, my skin flushed, mascara smeared down my cheek, but my smile was whole. I posted it from the hospital bed. "She's here?" That was all the caption said. My phone lit up with notifications, mostly from coworkers, a few old friends from college. Ethan's mother liked the post. No comment. Carla didn't react at all. By Sunday afternoon, the room was still empty of visitors. Nurses rotated out, asked if we needed anything. I lied and said we were fine. Ethan's parents texted that they would try to stop by later in the week. Carla sent nothing. I scrolled through social media at 3 in the morning while Emma slept in the bassinet beside me. Carla had posted pictures from Mason's birthday party balloons, streamers, a mountain of gifts, all captioned, "Best boy in the world." The likes poured in, comments flooded with heart emojis and praise. Our post sat there, quiet. On Monday, we drove home. I settled Emma into the crooked crib I'd built alone. It felt like stepping into a new skin. A mother, a keeper of something fragile, irreplaceable. I waited all day for someone to knock, to bring food or flowers or advice I didn't ask for. Instead, the doorbell stayed quiet. The house hummed with the soft sounds of a newborn's breath and my own heartbeat trying to learn a new rhythm. That evening, Ethan's sister finally texted. One line. "Congrats." No name, no emoji. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. I could have responded with warmth. I could have ignored it. Instead, I typed, "Emma is beautiful." She didn't reply. At night, I rocked my daughter against my chest, her tiny fingers curling in my shirt. I held her close, cheek to cheek, inhaling that new baby softness that felt like a promise. I told her she was loved. I told her she was wanted. I told her I would be louder than any silence. And in that dim room, the truth hit with the weight of something permanent. I had crossed a threshold alone. And somewhere out there, Carla was already curating the narrative, hers in celebration, mine in quiet. But Emma's heartbeat against my skin was louder than the void. The first time I took Emma out to the park alone, it felt like stepping into a world I'd never been invited to inhabit. Spring was tentative, the grass patchy, the trees just beginning to flirt with green. I pushed her stroller along the winding paths, her small hands reaching for the sunlight streaming through the branches. She cooed and waved, the world filtering through her gaze like magic. And yet, with every stroller that passed, every laughter that rang from other mothers, I felt eyes on me. I tried to ignore them. Then I saw Carla. She was sitting on a bench near the playground, Mason beside her, perfectly dressed, perfectly shiny. She caught my gaze before I could even duck. That tilt of her head, the practiced smile, was the same one from the baby shower. It carried an invisible weight. I slowed my pace, hoping she would just wave and leave it at that. But she didn't. "Anna," she called, voice casual, as if we were friends meeting for coffee. I stopped, careful not to let Emma notice my pulse quickening. "How's she doing?" "Emma, right?" Her eyes flicked to my daughter. "Such a delicate little thing. You'll see, some babies just don't click with people." I stiffened. "Click?" I asked. My fingers tightened around the stroller handle. Emma stirred, sensing the tension. I forced a smile I didn't feel. "She'll click with the people who matter." Carla's laugh was soft, almost congratulatory, but it dripped over me like acid. "Of course. But you know, it's funny some babies have this energy. Mason had it from day one. People just flock to him. Some kids, though, you try and they're just quieter. You can love them as much as you want, but you can't make everyone else feel it." I swallowed the urge to say something sharp, anything that might expose the resentment coiled inside me. Instead, I nodded. Emma cooed again, and I felt that tiny pulse of life against me, reminding me that the words didn't define her. They couldn't. Carla leaned back on the bench, watching me pack Emma's blanket with a meticulous eye. She tilted her head, whispering to no one in particular. "It's just nature. Some kids are loved more. Some kids aren't." The sun dipped a little lower, and shadows stretched long across the playground. I felt a flicker of anger, a heat crawling up my spine. How dare she speak this way about the one person I had carried, nurtured, and protected? My voice trembled in my head, unsaid words forming like fists. But I kept walking, slow, deliberate, determined to shield Emma from the sting of Carla's judgment. The stroller wheels crunched along the gravel, the sound grounding me, reminding me I was moving forward. Later, when we reached the edge of the park, I stopped. Emma was looking up at me, her wide eyes trusting and open. I pressed a hand to her tiny chest. "Don't listen," I whispered. "They don't get to decide your worth." "They don't get to decide your worth?" "I do." Her fingers brushed mine, delicate, soft, and I felt something ignite a quiet flame of resolve. The world could be cruel, judgmental, and blind. But as long as I was here, she would feel love, real and unwavering. Carla waved from a distance, a casual gesture that felt like a challenge. I didn't respond. I couldn't let her see the fury, the storm forming beneath my calm. I turned, wheeling Emma's stroller toward home, each step heavy with purpose. For the first time in days, I felt that maybe, just maybe, the invisible mother could be stronger than the one everyone was already celebrating. It was just past noon when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number at first. Carla. My stomach tightened before I even answered. The sound of her voice was sharp, panicked, the kind of panic that doesn't mask itself behind smiles or rehearsed poise. "Anna, I need you," she said. Her words tumbled over each other, frantic. "Mason, he's gone." "I don't know where he is." I froze. Emma was in the car seat beside me, quietly sucking on her hand. The sun hit the dashboard at an angle that made her hair glow. I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing. "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, voice low, studying myself, even as adrenaline flooded my veins. "Shopping. I was in the store, I turned around, and he wasn't there. Someone took him. I don't know what to do." Her breaths were short, frantic, panic, raw, unfiltered panic. I could hear every tremor, every falter. This was a side of Carla I had never witnessed, a raw human fragility that she usually kept buried beneath confidence and control. I grabbed my keys, shoving the stroller into the trunk. "Where are you?" I asked. "I'm coming." "Stay on the line." The drive to the shopping center felt like hours. Emma slept quietly, unaware that the world outside could contain such terror. When I pulled into the lot, my stomach sank. Security guards were clustered around, walkie-talkies in hand, scanning the crowd with tense determination. Carla was pacing by the entrance, Mason nowhere in sight, her hands tangled in her hair. I didn't let her see the flicker of disbelief in me. Carla had always been the one commanding attention, making everyone else feel small. But right now, she was the one unsteady, exposed. I put a hand lightly on her arm. "Show me where you were last," I said. Her nod was frantic, grateful, and yet unsteady. She led me inside, pointing out aisles, murmuring bits of incoherent explanation. We split up with the security team. I moved slowly, methodically, letting the panic in my chest sharpen into focus. Emma was in her car seat carrier, strapped against me as if she understood the weight of the moment. Every turn of the aisle, every unfamiliar face made my pulse quicken. Carla stayed close, whispering apologies between sobs, almost muttering, "I didn't mean to. I wasn't paying attention." Then I saw him. Mason, near the toy section, reaching for a bright plastic car, oblivious to the chaos around him. Relief hit me like a wave, warm and dizzying. I scooped him up, holding him close, feeling his small body trembling against mine. Carla collapsed beside us, her face buried in her hands, her perfect facade shattered. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Mason was safe. Emma cooed from her carrier, and I felt a strange, sharp clarity. Carla had lived a moment of exposure, a taste of fear that stripped her of the armor she wore so meticulously. And I'd been there, calm, controlled, saving the day. For a moment, the roles felt reversed. Later, in the car, Carla kept glancing at me, ashamed, almost pleading. Mason slept in my arms while Emma rested beside me. I realized in a quiet corner of my mind that this moment shifted something between us. She had always dominated, always commanded love and attention. But for the first time, she had needed me, and I had shown up. The next morning, Carla insisted we all meet at the security office of the shopping center. My muscles ached from the tension of the previous day, but I went anyway, Emma strapped in her carrier. Mason clutched my hand, still rattled but alive, his small grip grounding me. Carla walked ahead, quick strides, face pale and taut with anxiety. There was no trace of her usual arrogance, no polished smile, just a raw edge of panic beneath the surface. The security guard led us to a small room filled with monitors. Each screen flickered with loops of footage, the quiet hum of electronics filling the air. Carla's voice trembled as she explained, "They said they could check the cameras. Maybe we can see what happened." Ethan hovered at her side, silent, tense. I stood behind them both, calm, eyes scanning the monitors. Emma shifted in her carrier, her warmth against me a reminder that life could be fragile and resilient at the same time. The guard rewound the footage. Minute by minute, the scene replayed. Families wandered through aisles. Employees restocked shelves. And there he was, Mason, wandering away from Carla as she browsed a display of baby clothes. Time seemed to stretch. My stomach clenched as the reality settled in. She had let him go, even for a few moments, unsupervised. My hands trembled slightly, but I remained silent, letting the video tell the story. Carla shifted beside me, biting her lip, her eyes darting from screen to screen. She murmured, voice almost inaudible, I don't know how it happened. I turned around, and he was gone." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I felt a strange current of satisfaction mixed with worry. Here was the truth laid bare, undeniable, and yet unspoken. I could have screamed it, shouted at her for negligence, for carelessness. I could have demanded she face what she had risked. But something restrained me. Emma stirred against my chest, and I realized the lesson was already written. Exposure to consequence could be its own teacher. The video continued, showing the moment I arrived, calm and decisive, lifting Mason into my arms while Carla's hands fluttered uselessly, caught in disbelief. She had needed me. She had counted on someone else to fix her mistake, and my own fear had been replaced by focus, by the certainty that children's safety wasn't negotiable. I was no longer invisible. I was the anchor. Carla's lips trembled. Don't tell Ethan, please." Her voice cracked. Not pleading for forgiveness, not even for compassion. Just a desperate wish to keep the truth hidden, to maintain control over perception. I watched her shrink, the dominance she wielded for years dissolving in the harsh light of accountability. I wanted to say something sharp, something that would echo through the family's memory forever. But instead, I bent down slightly, holding Mason close, letting him cling to my shirt. "It's done," I whispered quietly, almost to myself. She would have to live with the weight of her choices, whether anyone else knew or not. I looked down at Emma in the carrier. She stirred, a soft coo. And in that tiny sound, I felt power, clarity, and the quiet rise of something irreversible. I didn't speak at first. Carla's confession hung between us, heavier than any words could carry. She had left him, Mason, for those 15 minutes, the ones that could have ended in disaster. And now she looked at me with wide, fearful eyes, as if I could undo what had already been done. I held Mason close, feeling the slow rise and fall of his chest, letting the warmth of his body remind me of what mattered. Emma shifted in her carrier against me, her presence quiet, grounding, reminding me that life moved forward even when chaos had its moment. She whispered, barely audible, "Please, don't tell Ethan, don't tell anyone. I wasn't thinking." I didn't mean to. Her voice cracked, and for the first time I saw the cracks beneath her polished exterior. She'd always been confident, sharp, untouchable. But now she was exposed, vulnerable in a way she couldn't command or control. The sight of it stirred something deep within me, not pity, not triumph, but a sober understanding of power, responsibility, and consequence. I tightened my hold on Mason, feeling his small fingers curl around mine. "You made a choice," I said softly. It wasn't deliberate, but it was a choice. And choices have consequences. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to point fingers. The truth was plain. She'd already felt it in her bones. Carla's lips quivered. I panicked. I thought someone else would. Her words faltered, collapsed under the weight of shame. She tried to steady herself, but the tremor in her hands betrayed the lie. She had relied on others for rescue, and now she could no longer assert control. I realized then that the dynamic between us had shifted. She'd always been the one holding court, commanding admiration, setting the tone of motherhood as a performance. But here now she was forced to reckon with her own limitations. I breathed slowly, keeping my voice calm, almost detached. "You're not a bad mother for feeling overwhelmed, but letting fear replace attention, that's dangerous. And it shouldn't happen again." Mason squirmed slightly in my arms, and I adjusted him, feeling his warmth seep into me. Carla's eyes followed every movement, almost as if she were studying how to breathe again. The air was thick, quiet except for Mason's soft murmurs and the faint hum of the air conditioner. Emma kicked gently in her carrier, and I pressed my hand over her belly, feeling the small pulse of life. This was my strength, the constancy of presence, the ability to act when chaos erupted. I realized that being a mother wasn't just about love or nurture. It was about presence, awareness, and decisiveness, even when everyone else faltered. Carla's voice trembled again. I don't know how I'll face anyone. Ethan, everyone." Her sentence drifted off into silence. I didn't answer. My presence, quiet and steady, spoke louder than any lecture. The responsibility she had shirked, the consequences she had narrowly avoided, were lessons she would carry. I could guide her toward reflection, but I wouldn't carry her burden. Not entirely. This was a reckoning she had to own. I held both children in my arms, Emma and Mason, and in that moment, I understood the gravity of what had shifted. Carla had always assumed she could command attention, love, and admiration. But now she had tasted vulnerability, a truth she could neither deny nor erase. And I had discovered a strength that could not be overshadowed, a quiet certainty that being present, vigilant, and unwavering made me more than anyone had ever acknowledged. The days that followed were quiet, almost suspiciously so. Carla retreated into herself, moving through the house with a carefulness I hadn't seen before. She smiled less, spoke less, and for the first time, the spotlight she had always occupied dimmed without anyone needing to push her aside. It was as if the universe had finally corrected a tilt I hadn't even known existed. The family began to shift too, subtly at first. Ethan's mother called, asking if she could bring over lunch. My aunts-in-law offered to babysit for an afternoon. Cousins sent texts with congratulations that felt genuine, not performative. Emma received gifts she hadn't gotten at birth. Books, soft blankets, even hand-knit booties from strangers who somehow learned her name. And when they came over, it wasn't for Carla. They were here for her, for Emma, for the small life that seemed to glow in my arms. I watched it unfold like a carefully orchestrated scene I hadn't expected to direct. The family's attention, which had always swirled around Carla, now circled quietly, insistently around us. And still, Carla lingered in the background, her voice subdued, her steps measured. There was no confrontation, no accusations. She had been seen, exposed, and perhaps she understood, in that raw way she could not articulate, that the dynamics had changed forever. I held Emma in my arms one evening while we sat in the living room. She gurgled, laughing at the shadows cast by the lamplight, and I felt a sense of triumph that was quiet but absolute. No one had to announce it, no one had to applaud. Emma was loved, undeniably, and it was not the performance of others that gave her that love. It was the constancy of care I provided, the vigilance that never wavered, the presence that had carried her through every moment. Carla approached quietly, standing near the doorway. She offered a small smile, tentative, almost apologetic. "She's beautiful," she said, voice low. Her hands fidgeted, betraying the discomfort beneath the calm tone. I nodded, letting her words land without comment. I didn't need to welcome her praise or demand her acknowledgement. It was enough that she understood, in some silent, unspoken way, that Emma's love had been claimed by the mother who had been steady when chaos struck, who had protected, who had acted. The subtle shifts continued. At family dinners, it was now polite to ask how Emma was, to inquire about her sleep, to mention the milestones she had reached. I answered softly, smiling, watching his eyes linger on my daughter and, in a way, on me. For once, I was no longer invisible. The family's attentions, once monopolized by Carla, were balanced, redistributed by circumstances they could neither ignore nor control. That night, I watched Emma sleep, small and warm against my chest. I whispered to her, letting the words carry through the quiet room. "You are loved, Emma. Not by chance, not by accident, but because I am here, because I never left, because I will always be." And as she shifted slightly, eyelids fluttering in dream, I knew she understood in her own way. The love she received was constant, unwavering, undeniable. Even if Carla tried to reclaim the narrative, it no longer mattered. The truth of her safety, her care, and her place in the family had been claimed, and it was ours to keep. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of our lives settled into a fragile, but undeniable balance. Carla moved carefully, almost cautiously, around the edges of family gatherings, no longer the commanding presence she had once been. Her laughter had softened, her words measured, almost apologetic. She tried, subtly, to regain some foothold, offering to babysit, asking for advice in hushed tones. But there was a hesitation in her gestures that betrayed a newfound awareness of limits she could no longer ignore. I observed quietly, holding Emma in my arms during one such attempt. She reached for the mobile I had finally hung, her tiny fingers brushing the spinning shapes, while I felt the quiet pulse of satisfaction growing inside me. I had learned patience, the steady power of presence, and the quiet authority of consistency. Carla had tried to dominate, to define love as she saw fit, but in that attempt, she had revealed her own vulnerability. That vulnerability had shifted the dynamic permanently. No one had to point it out. No one needed to declare it. The balance was subtle, like the careful sway of a pendulum finally finding its center. Emma was loved fiercely and fully, and the family could no longer ignore it. Carla had tasted the consequences of recklessness, and in silence she began to recognize her own place, not in dominance, but in accountability. One afternoon, I overheard her speaking softly to Ethan. I don't know what I'd do without her," she murmured, voice tinged with humility. Mason played nearby, unaware of the unspoken truth surrounding him. I didn't intervene. I didn't offer comfort or correction. She had learned, and this was hers to carry. The weight of her choices was no longer mine to bear, and in that realization, I felt a sense of liberation that had nothing to do with vengeance and everything to do with balance restored. I thought often of the baby shower, of the whispered warning that had set this entire chain in motion. "My baby will be more loved than yours." Carla's words had been a challenge, a threat veiled in certainty, and yet, love, real, persistent, deliberate love had proven stronger. Not the love that was performative or easily swayed by appearances, but the kind that emerges from presence, vigilance, and unwavering care. Emma had received it, and through her, I had claimed my own recognition as a mother who could not be dismissed, who could not be overlooked. At night, as I rocked both children in my arms, I whispered softly, my words a promise and a reflection. Love is what we give, Emma. It's not about being the favorite. It's about being present. And that is more powerful than anything anyone else can say or do. Mason had curled against me, exhausted but safe, and I felt the rhythm of two small hearts beating against mine. Carla lingered in the background, quiet, a shadow of the control she once wielded. She wanted her place back, but it was no longer hers to reclaim by dominance or decree. The landscape had shifted irrevocably, and the only place she had was one she had to earn with humility. I watched Emma drift to sleep, fingers clutching the blanket I placed around her. The soft rise and fall of her chest mirrored my own steady breathing. I realized then that this was the essence of motherhood, the quiet authority of protection, the unshakable presence, and the knowledge that love, true love, cannot be measured, stolen, or diminished. Carla had learned the lesson she deserved, and Emma had received the gift she deserved. And in that truth, I felt a deep, unshakable peace, knowing that we had arrived at a place of balance, integrity, and undeniable love.